grown up in Mobile, these storms change. And as they change, you know, you can be surprised. And one of the biggest threats that we have is that you've decided, maybe made the decision that you're going to stay in a low-lying area that you know is flood-prone, thinking that maybe the storm's not quite as bad as it's predicted to be. And when you do, and then all of a sudden things get a little hairy and you call for emergency response personnel, they're having to risk their lives to save you. So please keep it in mind. The pleas that we're making to you, the warnings that we're giving you, they're serious. They're talking about unprecedented amounts of rainfall. Another consideration for you is that the ground right now is already saturated. I mean, we've been having rain in the last few weeks. So you have saturated ground, predicted unprecedented amounts of rainfall, and then sustained wind that's moving very slow. So if you have a 50-mile-an-hour wind, if it moves through here at 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, it's going to do a certain amount of damage. But if that wind is going at 2 miles an hour through here as it works its way, the damage is going to be unbelievable as far as uprooting trees. So please heed the warnings that are being given by the EMA, by all of the emergency response personnel. So thank you for what you're doing. I feel very confident that we are prepared from an emergency response standpoint in the collaboration with the county and with the EMA and our other partners in this. So I'll turn it over now to Commissioner Ludgood. I have to find my mask.
Good morning. On behalf of the County Commission, I'd just like to report that we have no road closures thus far. That's a good thing. We remain hopeful in that regard. The County Commission offices will remain closed tomorrow. The other thing I'd just like to encourage each of you to do is to continue to reach out to your neighbors and your friends, elderly people that you know in the community or in your faith congregation. Make sure they're okay. We know that we don't have, that we only have 2 shelters up right now, and I'm getting calls from people who are concerned about people who live in certain areas, whether they have access to transportation, who's going to take care of them because they don't have a support system. Let's each of us be that, if you will. And then for those people who need other services, then Mike Evans will talk later about that. Right now, I'd like to yield the mic to Sheriff Sam Cochran, just for an opportunity for him to let you know in the county what level of protection is going on out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. And yes, the Sheriff's Office is on the job today, tonight, and throughout this thing. But as I'd echo what many before me have said, if you're in the low-lying areas, and if you live in South Mobile County, you know you're in a low-lying area, and particularly if you're close to a stream, a creek, or to the bay or something, you're in high-risk territory. And we ask you, please don't risk the lives of our deputies and first responders if you decide to stay and start calling for help, because that's what you're going to be doing to us. And we just don't want to have to put our people in harm's way and make take life-risking chances. You've heard the saying many times, run from the water, hide from the wind. Well, you've had an extra 24 hours to get away from the water. You know, the storm slowed down, you've got an extra 24 hours to get out of there. If you don't know whether you're going to flood, ask your neighbor that's been there for a while. I can tell you from many years of experience and many times past, I've seen streets and neighborhoods quickly fill up with 5, 6, 7, and even more depth of water in a short period of time. So if you make that decision to ride it out, be prepared to ride it out in one of those neighborhoods surrounded by deep, deep water for maybe a couple of days or longer before you can get out. And so again, that's what I ask you. I stress that it's your safety and the safety of the first responders. And thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Mike Evans from Mobile County EMA, and I'm going to be brief, but you know, we talked yesterday about uncertainty, and many of you just listened to the governor's conference and the meteorologist there. So is there uncertainty? Absolutely. Is the storm changing? Seems to be by the hour. What does that mean to you? What that means to you is you need to continue to watch it, because every change could mean harsher conditions for where you're at. Some changes could mean the other, but let's don't focus on that. So right now, Mobile County is still under, from the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service Office, a hurricane warning, a storm surge warning, a high surf warning. Other parts of the county are under a flood warning, and there's also a flash flood watch. So all these warnings are in place, and they're in place because our weather service partners feel like there's some severe weather right on the cusp of being here. We've witnessed a little bit with the outer bands this morning. So like the sheriff said, and the mayor and the commissioner, you know, it's slowed down a little bit. That gives us time to do things. So the things that you need to be doing, if you're out there in those areas where you're concerned about the coastal and the flood surge and the hurricane surge, any of the flooding, the inland flooding, the flash flooding, or you live in a manufactured home, you know, if you live in the manufactured home, the wind, the tropical storm force, and the hurricane is a concern. So I would encourage you to go to a safer place in the county, you know, up in the middle to central northern part of the county. If you've got friends or relatives, please go stay with them. Reach out to them and tell them you feel unsafe. We do have shelters open. Right now we got 2. We've got 1 on standby. If we start filling up, we have plenty of capacity at the 2 shelters. But the shelters are for a last resort. They're for someone who truly has nowhere to go. They're also congregate shelters, so you'll be in a shelter with other citizens, and everyone's going to get screened for COVID-19. They're going to get asked the questions. They're going to get their temperature taken. So, you know, so again, there's time to get to a safe area, and you know, take a few minutes and do that, and then when the storm's over with, you can go back and see how things shake out. You know, you need to be prepared for 72 hours with things like food, water, battery-operated devices. If we lose power, you need a way to get the information from the local media. And if you're going to use generators, just please be safe with them. There's all kind of inherent problems with generators. You know, back surge in electricity, getting people hurt, putting it in the wrong place and putting fumes inside of a building, so be careful. You know, just be careful with candles if you have to use those. But there's time to get ready, ladies and gentlemen, and there's no time like now. If you feel unsafe, go to a safe place. Thank you.
So we'll entertain any questions, and we'll swap between the 4 of us to answer them.
Hi, Jamie McGriff with NBC 15. Wanted to know, for those who are going to be tested for COVID-19, if those results come back positive, what then?
Well, they'll be screened, and if they get tested, it'll be actually a little bit later. So if they are, the assumption is they've either been around someone or they have it, the shelters are prepared. They've got some alternate areas that they're going to separate everyone. If you don't suspect it of having it, they'll be in a big area. The social distancing will be in effect. Wearing the mask. If they do food, it'll be like bagged food. They're not going to do open serving food. But if someone is suspected through the screening, then they will put them in an area segregated from people who are not suspected of having it.
And what is the capacity that you have as far as the number of people?
So the shelter that's open right now, the general population shelter, under normal circumstances is about 1,000. With COVID-19 protocols, it drops that down to about probably 250 to 300. So it cuts it by a good 2/3. So,
are you prepared for a tidal wave if by chance you get 1,000 people who need somewhere to go?
yes, that's why we have another shelter on standby. That we've got a number in mind that if we get to that number now, we're going to go ahead and open that other shelter. And we potentially have another shelter that we could open. So we have some alternate things in place. Right now, we have people in the shelter, but we're nowhere near capacity. But we do have a number. When we hit that number, we start opening the next shelter.
Steve?
Can you talk about any kind of preparations to alleviate flooding? This might be a sewage and water board thing more, but I know pumps can only pump so much, and obviously nothing can handle this kind of situation, but do you check the pumps? Can you talk a little bit about what y'all have done to try to?
I'll take a shot at that. You know, Steve, really it's an individual location. There's very little you can do for flooding of streets, let's say at this point in time. You know, there's no pumping that's really going to make any difference because it's typically coming out of a creek or coming down the street or something. those areas, and what comes to mind is Gulf Quest Museum. I mean, they have sandbags at their entry points that are down at the ground level. They have pumps that can take the water, but if it piles up against the sandbags. And so typically, all that we see is the sandbags, or there are some buildings downtown that do have some other protection, and it's hard to describe, but it's like an aluminum wall that can go against the windows and screw into the sidewalk. But they have to really think that the water's going to come up, that high to be able to breach that. Unless Masuri or Sam and anybody has another answer to that. Okay.
Mayor, do you plan on implementing a curfew?
Don't know yet. We'll see what happens during the evening, and then we'll make that determination. Yeah. The question was do we plan to implement a curfew? And at this time, we don't plan to, but we're ready to if need be. Anything else?
Mayor, one thing I can add about Steve's question, we did have a call this morning with the malls team, and the director over there with his team assured us that they were doing everything that they needed to do to try to ensure the water system and the sewer was as prepared as it could be. So the malls team is working overtime just like everybody else, so they're doing their part from that perspective.
Thanks.
So have we talked about a follow-up? No. Yeah, we will huddle after this, and then we'll tell you what the follow-up news conference may be to keep you abreast of what's going on. So give us a few minutes, and we'll just communicate with you individually. Thank you for being here, and let's all stay safe and healthy. Yeah. No, I'm staying right here.
Yes, sir.
What do y'all think?